10 years ago today, one of the greatest sequels of the 21st century was released. It was a movie that I spent nearly 3 years anticipating, it was a movie that I couldn't have been more excited for, and it was a movie that, when all was said and done, would go on to become one of my favorite pieces of filmmaking to ever come out of the science fiction genre. That movie was Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and today I'm here to tell you why it is still one of the most timeless and most relevant blockbusters of our time, 10 years later. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is, in many ways, the perfect sequel. The scale is bigger, the characters are deeper and more layered, the story is more thought-provoking, the technical achievements are greater, but the one thing it does that all of the all-time great sequels do, whether it be The Dark Knight, Terminator 2, or The Empire Strikes Back, is that it delivers on challenging our hero with a really great villain. In Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, that villain comes in the form of Koba.
That's good, huh? Yeah. That's good.
Hey, okay, all right.
Easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
Easy.
Koba was first introduced in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, the first film in the rebooted Planet of the Apes franchise that was released back in 2011, as a sympathetic but angry laboratory ape who is subject to dozens of scientific tests and experiments, and while not a major character in that film, he does become one of Caesar's loyal followers and a trusted ally in the battle on the Golden Gate Bridge by the end of the film. However, it is in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes where Koba is given a much larger, much more important, and much more complex role in the story, starting out as one of Caesar's closest, strongest, and most trusted friends before succumbing to his anger and his hatred for the humans who hurt him and ending the film as Caesar's greatest enemy. Koba, as much as we love to hate him, and love to see him lose in his final battle with Caesar, is the textbook definition of a sympathetic villain. His origin story is one of tragedy, an ape who spent his life in captivity and who you as the viewer can understand and empathize with how he feels. It is the aspect of the character, on top of an incredibly well-realized arc and a powerhouse performance from Toby Kebbell, that the character of Koba works so well as a villain, and has remained the fan favorite ever since the film was released.
Human. What? Human. What? Human. What? Human work!
Having a villain that audiences can understand and, more importantly, care about is crucial to telling a great story. The villain is the embodiment of the challenge that our hero has to overcome, and in any great story, the greater the conflict is, the more satisfying the resolution will be. Koba being such a well-written, sympathetic, and fleshed-out character creates what is arguably the most compelling and most interesting relationship between two characters that the Planet of the Apes franchise has ever seen in its more than 50-year history, which leads me to the other side of that coin, Caesar.
Who was that? On the video.
A good man. Like you.
Caesar, the first ape born with the ALZ virus, giving him heightened intelligence, including the ability to speak, is the chimpanzee who started the revolution and led captive apes, including Koba, to freedom. In this story, however, is where Caesar faces his greatest challenge yet in the trilogy, himself. In Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, we find Caesar now leading an entire community of intelligent apes. His life is going well, everything is peaceful, and the humans are now out of the picture. Until he comes across a bunch of them in the woods and agrees to let them do some human work at their home so that they can have electricity and keep humanity alive. Which is where the conflict I mentioned before really begins. In the same way that Koba's origin story is one of tragedy and anger, Caesar's is the opposite. While Caesar's treatment at the ape sanctuary in Rise is what ends up pushing him into becoming the iconic leader we all know him as, it was the kindness, understanding, and empathy that he learned from his father, Will, that ultimately shapes who he is and how he leads. He shows empathy to the humans who need his help and allows them to work even if deep down he would prefer them not to. He understands that finding common ground and working with others is the key pathway to maintaining peace and avoiding unnecessary conflict. But it is that same empathy, that same understanding, and that same kindness that leads Caesar to his own downfall, his hubris. At the core of its story, Dawn is a story about consequences, and in it, Caesar faces his own consequences, his aiding of humans, his belief that all apes are as kind as he is and as insusceptible to hatred as he is what ultimately ends up being his biggest flaw and most crucial error in the story.
I chose to trust him because he is ape. I always think ape better than human. I see now how much like them we are.
And that same error is where Koba comes in, and it is here where Dawn of the Planet of the Apes cements itself as a timeless blockbuster, just as, if not even more relevant today than ever before, as well as being a lesson in leadership. The moment when Koba shoots Caesar, taking advantage of his hubris, his leadership, his trust, is the moment where we get to see just how much the apes can be like us. It's the moment where, with just one act of corruption disguised as war, the apes rally behind their newly self-appointed leader as he rules them through fear and from a place of personal hatred and cruelty towards humans. Something that the Planet of the Apes franchise has always been famous for, ever since the first film's release all the way back in 1968, is its unsubtle efforts in using its stories to hold up a mirror to ourselves and our society. It's a commentary and critique on humanity. Koba's rise to power in Dawn, his weaponization of fear, his exploitation of his former friend's kindness and empathy is that commentary, is that critique, is that mirror. A terrifying, timely mirror.
Caesar, God. Apes, follow. Koba, no.
Koba's leadership style runs in stark contrast to that of Caesar. Throughout both Rise and Dawn, we get to know Caesar as someone who leads with compassion and empathy for his fellow apes. He aspires to help anyone and everyone who is under his watch in need, which is the polar opposite of Koba, who makes it clear that he truly is only in it for himself and his needs. Seeing these two characters both get their turn at governing the apes and leading their people in unprecedented times, with them being required to either fight the humans or work with them, showcases the difference it can make between one who leads through lies, hatred, fear, and corruption versus one who leads with empathy, heart, loyalty, and a genuine desire to do the right thing. The story of Caesar and Koba is the ultimate lesson in leadership, and by the end, we see why Koba ultimately fails while Caesar comes out on top.
Ape. Not kill. Ape. You are
Koba loses not because he is physically weaker than Caesar, but because he is emotionally weaker, more unstable, and is driven and blinded by anger, and by the end, his thirst for violence and power. He lacks the heart, as well as an understanding and empathy for the other that gives Caesar his advantage. But Caesar's win, his empathy, his compassion, and his kindness all comes at a cost. He loses his home and his friends. He inherits a coming war, and he nearly loses his son to the same hatred and anger that destroyed Koba. It's that hubris, that heart, that momentary mistake of letting his guard down and assuming all apes to be the same as him that ultimately leads to war. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is as powerful and resonant of a blockbuster today as it was when it was first released. It's an action-packed, visually stunning, thought-provoking insight into what can happen when power is put into the right versus wrong hands. It remains as stunning and timeless of a movie as ever, and a brilliant piece of filmmaking 10 years later. Thank you so much for checking out today's video here on Ape Nation. If you liked this video, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on all things apes. I'll catch you in the next one, so until then, goodbye.